in upper echelons, for example, in terms of directorships of companies, important positions and so on, they just found the glass ceiling, as it were, very hard to break through. And that's okay, I think, some time ago. But now, because so many people, the diasporic community is so successful, what we found was many of them say, well, look, and most of you will be familiar with what they think, that people in power, directorships, and particularly when we look at the political class, people in Canberra, they find that every time we want to walk into a room, like even here, people generally, they say male, pale, and stale. Now, I think the male part is slightly different now because, again, we can see approximately half men and women here. But the pale part is really for what gets particularly the Chinese, which I was involved in. The other chair, the co-chair, is Indian, Professor Ripsey. And so we looked at but these two diasporas in particular because they're very, very strong. And having sort of talking now to more and more to people, and in the last few weeks, in particular, last few months, when this meeting was called for, some people said to me, look, in the last few months, the idea that, particularly for Chinese students, that they are loyal to China, and some even say they could be spies and so on. And I'm sorry I wasn't here last week, but many also claim that they are seen as anti-democratic. So the whole idea that democracy is Australian, Western countries, and those countries you can't trust these people because they don't know democracy, or automatically they're anti-democratic. Now, my feeling is from talking to, not just from this report, but just talking to them, many of them are much more pro-democratic or pro the idea of democracy than people in Australia. And they would fight. Of course, some of them would be, would be against the Australian system, but most of them actually see Australia as home, and of course the students are not citizens in the legal sense, but they are civic citizens in the sense that many of them probably would settle here, and in particular, more and more students that we see at universities, a second generation, they don't know anything, and nothing else apart from being Australian. Now, the problem here is, in terms of this report, as I said, I'm not so concerned in this issue about the legal sense of citizenship. But the real problem for Australia is, these people say to us, look, if we're not appreciated here, we go somewhere where America, Singapore, Hong Kong, whatever. And I myself went to Hong Kong and just came back here to retire after I've served many years at Hong Kong University. Now, and there's a real problem because the diaspora advantage actually states quite clearly, that it is an advantage to have that diaspora. They know many languages, as Joe sort of pointed out, as Professor Louie pointed out. Culturally, they whether by luck or whatever, they do have some idea. My children have some idea of Chinese culture, even though they've spent their whole lives here. That advantage is often wasted. And that advantage is extremely important for Australia. And so we, after I've done this and after talking to lots of people, including company directors, we have focus groups and so on, the importance of diaspora, as opposed to, say, sojourners or migrants or refugees or whatever, to Australia is extremely important. And we're losing that advantage. Because if we're losing the best people, they say, well, I'm not appreciated here. I go into a meeting and it's all male, pale, and stale. I leave, you know, and these people have really good sort of sense of where the world is going. And this morning, several people mentioned that, you know, the idea of citizenship, the idea of modernity is changing all the time. I mean, we change our ideas as we get more experience and so on. And the diaspora, almost by definition, their view is much more world view than the nationalistic sort of narrow citizenship kind of idea. And so I thought that I should follow up, as I said, with my colleagues' comments by expanding a little bit on, because